Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I am going to be talking about a project that is so obscure tonight, that is so waterlogged by time and secrecy that it almost sounds like fiction. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about Operation Float Farm. That was done in the mid 1950s by America. That the military over there built floating hydroponic stations at sea, like specific basically, and these were self-sustaining farms that, in the event of nuclear war, these would basically be a like base, so you could go in, feed remote troops, colonize the ocean. Because there's a thing that if there's nuclear war, the land would be wrecked, but you could go in the ocean. So, and hello, Cam. So, if you don't know who I am, I'm Paranormal Ripples, aka Ray. This is Abandoned Legacies, episode 23. And this is where I talk about and resurrect places, projects, buildings, and things that people have tend to forgot about or didn't even know existed. And so, this is the military experiment that has been redacted and such in things. So first, if you don't know what this is, right, basically, this is what made Float Farm to come into fruition. Basically, after World War II, everyone was starting to be worried, basically, about what the next kind of war would be fought with. And America showed its power, obviously, with Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And basically, America decided that if the war was going to be fought with nuclear weapons, we're going to need to be one step ahead. So we'd build nuclear bunkers, do water purification, do off-grid living, basically all that, which is so basically military planners were brought in and they were tasked with imagine a world like Fallout that if the world did go to shit, how would we survive still as human beings? So they realized that they wouldn't be able to hide underground because obviously radiation. So they thought, we know what they could do. Float. And then the name of Operation Float Farm. So they thought, let's get a specific defense initiative under it, and there's basically this is a classified program with a bizarre offshoot, which was growing food on the ocean, basically on platforms in the ocean. So officially, when this project was took under this wing, I'm going to try and find you a picture now of Operation Float Farm, so you know what I'm on about. Try and find one. Right. Right. Let's have a look here for it. Right. So this is basically what this is a late build that has gone on now, modern day. But this is what they had in mind back in the 50s. As you can see, like a floating station, bring to them in the Pacific Ocean, and that you had the agriculture, everything like that. But without this, you'd have to get to it by boat, and you'd be living on this. And yeah, I'll leave that up so you can see what I mean. So basically, when the float farm station started started coming in, only 30 servicemen were tasked with these. So there was only crews of 3 to 5 people on a floating station. And their mission was basically to monitor crop viability, basically test the water system to make sure everything was tickety boo, basically report durability of the floating infrastructure. But to get this job, it would be classed as the loneliest post in the Pacific Ocean, because you'd be away from your families for quite a long time. You would be basically like with your own thoughts. It's like a Doctor Who fucking episode where the TARDIS would land, and then you'd be, thing. Basically, journals were recovered from some of these stations, and they described early rotations between these stations, like that there was long stretches of silence, bizarre ocean swells, and the constant hum of generators. But these sometimes changed pitch in the middle of the night for some reason. And there was reports that equipment was moved and went missing, but they returned days later in another area of the flower farm without any explanation. So, what was going on? Basically, it's anyone's guess. Then comes the year 1957, and lettuce, tomatoes, hard root vegetables were basically harvested. They actually achieved their stuff, and it was. But basically, strange incidents began to increase on these infrastructures. Basically, lights under the water. There's erratic radio interference at times, and there's a phenomenon that was often described by people at the time as vertical rain. And one crew member, though, who we don't know who it was, but they were looking in the journals and they found this crew member's entry, and basically he was saying that the water isn't right. It looks like something is breathing beneath them in the float farm. So the military grew suspicious of the reports, as they would be, but the results were buried under red tape. Yes, buried under red tape, as everything was. So they thought, what can we do? So they brought in new people and new rotations, but then they started showing signs of acute paranoia. 2 men reportedly jumped in the ocean in the middle of the night and were never found. Others even refused to sleep inside the greenhouses, claiming that they were hearing whispers from the hydroponic tanks. And if you don't know what an hydroponic tank is, I'm going to show you a picture now, but this is an example of an hydroponic tank, everyone. So, yeah, crew members described that they could hear shit from this, like breathe, like they could hear whispering from these. And a memo was discovered, declassified, and basically was titled "Elevated Hazard Conditions, Non-Physical." Right, and they recommended pulling the platforms for stability analysis. But the language that was used in the memo was suggested that these people that were doing it was not only worried about hardware, they were worried about these platforms affecting the crew's mind. So you see what's happening here. There's a recurring pattern. So then one of the larger platforms in 1959, codenamed Arc 3, sent a shortwave transmission that would later become infamous in military law in America. Harvest completed, and they're awaiting extraction. No one left to report. So there's no crew, no damage. Crops were still growing. The only thing that was missing, like I said, is the crew. And that's 48 hours later. 48 hours after that message was sent, recovery crews were sent in to get them out. And there's no one. So what happened? And you might ask. Well, personal items were untouched. Solar units were still generating power. The onboard logbook at the time was just ended like that abruptly. Surveillance balloons on the floating farm suggested that there was no signs of boats or planes in the area of the time the transmission happened. And Arc 3 was quietly dismantled at a convenient place. It was towed to Pearl Harbor. So what's the pattern, you're asking? Why is there this going on? Well, basically, right, you'll find out in a minute what's going on here. But I'll let you guess what you think is going on, Cam, and anyone else who's watching on catch up. What do you think has been going on? But yeah, about within months, the float farm was dissolved, equipment was removed, obviously, data files were boxed up, congressional briefings cancelled, and the Navy cited high costs. The military, though, was not having none of it at the time. And basically, the memos was going on between the two. And one of the navies was saying that no further subjects will be placed under observation. No further subjects. What's going on here? And historians have believed that this was an experiment within an experiment. So was they doing something psychological, like an experiment with psychological feedback, or was it an environmental thing that spiraled out of control? Basically, not all the documents were recovered as well, which has led to theories. But what was declassified, though, which was really of interest to people, was basically mentions of event wake and a reaction zone appear without context, and one photograph which has gone missing again conveniently showed a greenhouse platform at sunset, but the reflection of the water is wrong. And the sun's angle doesn't match anything known on this planet. So, one naval archivist basically flagged missing audio logs from Arc 3, the final month in the water. And they said, because they've been flagged missing, people have said, have they been wiped? Have they been deleted? Have they just been locked up? And some people have also said, were there ever any recordings to begin with? And that the voices that were getting mentioned, were they like coming from basically without a recording system? Like, was it actually like disembodied? So, fishermen and merchant vessels have reported spotting drifting structures, basically, all the time since these have gone in and not been around. One trawler in particular, a Japanese trawler, back in 1964, documented what would be a greenhouse dome covered in algae, and it was glowing in the night, and he radioed it in. They radioed it in and said, there's something here, blah 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 blah. And when the people come out to try and see what was there was nothing there. So satellite imagery then came about, and in the 1970s it showed debris trails that matched the original float farm designs. And that's where it gets crazy. Why all of a sudden was there nothing in the 1964 sighting, but in the 1970s satellite imagery was showing debris? Basically, could it be rebuilt today? If it needed to be, yes, is the answer, because a lot of modern architects have come out and said, yes, we can do it, like I showed you in that picture earlier. They are thinking of doing it. I think one has actually been built, if I remember correctly, in Rotterdam, ? I think Rotterdam has built one. And but yeah, this Cold War experiment has remained basically like a ghost. Silent. Nothing has been come out. And basically one naval engineer at the time, hello everyone, one naval engineer at the time of when this sort of Rotterdam experiment come out, said that the original float farms that America were doing in the Cold War basically weren't looking for stuff to help build food systems in case of nuclear disaster. They were looking to see if the ocean would be watching them back. Kind of eerie, isn't it? They weren't building food systems for nuclear war. They was looking at the ocean to see if the ocean would answer them back. So what happened? So what do you think these float farms were intended for? Let me know what you think, because I'm intrigued to think what you would think that these float farms kind of were used for. Because, and they can be, like I said, one's got rebuilt today in Rotterdam, I believe, and they're planning on doing loads more. But it's funny how it's been revisited after the experiment in the Cold War yielded those kind of results of eerie kind of like they could hear whispers in the water tanks. Like it was kind of, so what is going on? What are they really doing with these like floating farms? Are we actually disguising like mundane stuff as like, oh yeah, we're going to grow like plants and that and vegetation for actual fucking nuclear fallout, like vegetables that we could use to sustain ourselves? Or are we actually looking at something much darker? I'd love to get onto one of them original farms, but it's impossible now. It would have been like lovely to go step on foot on one and just see what the actual thing was, But yeah. So let me know what you think, everyone. What do you think Operation Float Farm was used for? So you think about it, and the sea has always been like a mirror. It reflects what we see at times. It distorts what we see at times as well. Every time there's a shimmer in the ocean, like a wave. Also, it hides stuff perfectly because we can't see what's deeply rooted in the sea or ocean or whatever. So, Operation Float Farm was primarily a thing for survival, like an experiment. But basically, it's ended up being a ghost kind of story because of like lost in the salt and static of the ocean. And sometimes what we abandon isn't actually what we abandon us for ourselves. We abandon it because we get warned. So was the warning actually intended as a good thing for them or a bad thing? So basically, leave a like if you enjoyed this and that. Share it with someone who appreciates this kind of Cold War history and let them see what they say. Subscribe to me if you want to, learn more stuff. check out my playlists or the live tab. I'll be live every Monday to Friday. With new episodes and everything of all my shows. I will be back on, hopefully, might be tomorrow, but I don't know yet. See how I feel. If it is tomorrow and I do come back on, I will be doing Secrets of the Stars. But see how I feel. If not, I'll be back on when I feel a bit better. And that. But yeah, check out all my other stuff. Leave a like, sub, turn on the notification bell so you don't miss anything. And obviously, yeah, welcome aboard if you do sub. And take care, everyone. Big love to you all. And have a good rest of your night. Take care, everyone.